I'm Isaac from the Mountain Takes, a man who had stood on Everest 10 times. And on April 17th, 2023, that man died alone in his tent at 23,300 feet on Annapurna. You think you know who conquered what? Wait till you hear this. Sit tight. It was April 17, 2023, at approximately 8:30 a.m. in the morning at Camp 4 on Mount Annapurna, sitting at 23,300 feet on the south side of the mountain. The temperature was -32 degrees Celsius. The wind was steady but not extreme. The weather was actually stable, clear skies, good visibility, the kind of conditions that make mountaineers feel secure. A climber lay in his tent, having returned from the summit the previous day. He had eaten hot soup the evening before. He had fallen asleep, and now, in the morning, he was not waking up. His tentmates found him in the night unconscious, breathing shallow, no response to stimuli. By morning, there was no response at all. He was gone. His name was Noel Hanna, and he was 56 years old. Noel Hanna was born in Northern Ireland in 1966 and had become one of his country's most accomplished mountaineers. His climbing resume was extraordinary. He had summited Mount Everest on 10 separate occasions, more summits than most climbers will ever attempt. In 2018, at age 52, he became the first person from the island of Ireland north and south combined to summit K2 and descend alive. K2 is known as the Savage Mountain, second highest peak on Earth, and a mountain where the fatality rate approaches 10%. To summit K2 and come back down alive is an achievement that separates elite mountaineers from everyone else attempting high-altitude peaks. He had done it. For over 30 years, Noel Hanna had dedicated his life to mountains. He wasn't a sponsored climber chasing social media followers. He wasn't a wealthy businessman checking items off a luxury list. He was a mountaineer in the traditional sense, a man who understood mountains in his bones, who respected their power, who had survived them repeatedly because he treated them with the reverence they demanded. The Irish climbing community knew his name. Fellow guides knew his name. People in the mountaineering world knew that Noel Hanna was a legitimate, accomplished, experienced high-altitude climber. On April 15, 2023, he summited Annapurna without supplemental oxygen. This was significant climbing at 26,545 feet without bottled oxygen is a different order of difficulty than climbing with oxygen support. His body had to process the extreme altitude on its own resources. He reached the summit and began his descent. He moved carefully down the mountain, conserving energy, following the fixed ropes, doing everything right. He made it back to Camp 4 at 23,300 feet. He was alive. He had achieved his goal. He had successfully summited and descended one of the world's deadliest mountains. That evening, April 15th, he ate hot soup in his tent. The expedition team noted that he seemed fine. He was tired, as any climber would be after a summit push and descent, but he was functional, coherent, responsive. He said he was going to sleep. His tentmates said goodnight, and Noel Hanna lay down to sleep at 23,300 feet on Annapurna, having successfully summited, having safely descended, having done everything a mountaineer is supposed to do. During the night, something changed. At extreme altitude, the human body exists in a state of constant physiological compromise. Every system is running on reserve. The heart is working overtime. The lungs are struggling to extract oxygen from air that contains 1/3 the oxygen of sea level. The brain is slowly being starved. For most climbers, this compromise is temporary. They summit and descend quickly to lower altitude where the body can begin to recover. But sometimes at 23,300 feet in the middle of the night, a body that has performed flawlessly all day simply decides to stop. A heart that has beaten millions of times at altitude suddenly skips a beat it cannot recover from. Respiratory function that has been maintained through sheer physiological determination simply ceases. By the time Noel Hanna's tentmates realized something was wrong, he was already unconscious. His breathing was shallow, his pupils were fixed. Medical intervention at that altitude in those conditions with those resources is essentially impossible. There is no emergency room at 23,300 feet. There is no defibrillator that will restart a heart at the edge of the death zone. There is only the reality that the body has failed and the mountain will collect its payment. Noel Hanna died at Camp 4 on Annapurna on April 17, 2023. The exact cause was never definitively determined, and at that altitude, with those conditions, the exact cause doesn't really matter. It was altitude, it was exposure, it was a body that had given everything it had to give and had nothing left. It was the mountain operating according to its indifferent mathematics. His wife, Noel Hanna, posted on Facebook after his death. He returned to the tent, took some hot soup, and fell asleep, never to awaken again. No drama, no big story. It was his time to go, and he died in the Himalayas. What better place for my mountain man? Sleep well, Noel. Those words, "it was his time to go," contain a kind of acceptance that most of us will never have to make. Noel Hanna had spent 30 years in mountains, knowing that this was a possibility. He had summited Everest 10 times. He had climbed dozens of peaks across the Himalayas and Karakoram. He had looked at mountains, and mountains had looked back at him, and when his time came, it came peacefully, not in a dramatic fall, not in an avalanche, not in a blizzard. It came in his sleep, after a successful day, at a place he loved, doing exactly what he had chosen to do his entire life. I'm Isaac from The Mountain Takes. If you've ever wondered what it means to spend your entire life in pursuit of mountains, if you've ever asked yourself whether a life dedicated to altitude and ice and risk is worth the cost, this is the story to sit with. Noel Hanna spent 30 years in mountains, and the mountains let him die on his own terms peacefully, after success, in the place he belonged. Some people search their entire lives for that kind of ending. He found it at 23,300 feet. Subscribe, because there are more stories of people who gave everything to mountains and what those mountains took in return. I'll see you on the next descent.
Meow.